Yeah, well, no, yeah, on a no, yeah.
Hello, this is Ryan Riccitelli with asnews.net, and this is podcast number 24. And we have kind of a special podcast because I have two professional riders staying with me at the moment, so they're in the studio. I've got Davey Blair here, and I've got Greg Norman. Davey Blair is out of South Carolina, lives in Hawaii, and I've got Greg Norman out of Florida. So, Davey and Greg, why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Hey, what's going on? My name is Davey Blair. Born and raised out of Charleston, South Carolina, and now reside on the North Shore of Oahu. Started kite surfing in Charleston, and the scene starting to happen there. Started teaching lessons and started realizing I wanted to progress even more into the sport because it's just so much fun crossing over from surfing. And yeah, now I'm on Oahu and surfing, trying to charge it in the waves out there.
My name is Greg Norman. I'm from Jupiter, Florida. Started kiting about 4 years ago when my snowboard instructor, she told me about kiting because she moved out to Maui and told me I like it. So I went out there and visited her, and she taught me how to do it. Been doing it ever since, crossing over behind the boat and the cable to train when there's no wind. And just trying to push ourselves. And I know Davey's out here. We're hitting the sliders that we got set up out here.
Basically what's going on down here is I invited the guys into town. Buckland, he's got his own private, slider park, and also doing an instructional clinic with Paul Lang, South Coast Kiteboarding, trying to just get more people on the water, brought the boys in, getting everybody stoked on kiteboarding. And actually we had the Caller Times out here, the newspaper of Corpus, and we made the front page yesterday. Why don't you talk a little bit, Davey, about what you think of Corpus?
Ryan, I love Corpus. I came here for the first time 2 years ago for the Velocity Games. I think it was 2003. And I just had a blast. I met Bucky and got tight with him, and he's been showing me the spots, and so I got a little bit of history, not that much. I mean, enough history to where I've seen a couple of the spots in town and ridden a lot of the really nice spots, like Buckland behind his house is just sick. We got really nice slider set up. We've been hitting it, and then Corpus has just been nothing but good for kite surfing. Like Ryan was talking about, got the front page of the newspaper this morning. It's pretty cool to, getting a little publicity for kite surfing here, because it is one of the best places, I think, in the world to come, because it blows 30 knots almost every day. So I'm super stoked to be here.
And Greg, you come from South Florida. I mean, it's a good kiteboarding destination, lots of flat water and stuff. Why don't you talk a little about Corpus and what you...
Oh man, it's trippy coming from Florida to see how much wind there is all the time. Because Florida, you get a day or two a week to kite. Here, it's like every day, and you're kind of like, okay, this is a day of no wind. I'm just gonna rest because my body's so sore from kiting. But yeah, coming here, same time I came here was with Davey for the Velocity Games, and we only got to see one spot. And then being here now, I get to cruise all over, find out some pretty killer spots to ride, like some super slicks. Yeah. And then right out front of, we got a slider park set up with a kicker, flat bar, and an A-frame set up, and we just go out there and hit that all day long, and we're loving it.
For those of you who don't know, I basically moved to Corpus Christi in October because of the wind. It seemed like a good place, kind of a wide open, unexplored area of kiteboarding, and I've been here for 4 months, and I just keep finding new places to kite. It's endless here, and the whole idea is to bring the boys into town, do something positive for the sport, get some photos. And I want to switch gears here and talk a little bit with Davey, because I know we're talking a lot about Corpus here, but Davey's a really strong wave rider in kiteboarding, and he really crosses over into the surf, and he's really pushing that in. He's also a tow surfer, and he lives on the North Shore, and he's in the mix of that. And I know a lot of our listeners, they do a lot of tow surfing and stuff like that. So why don't you give us a little heads up about the winter and what's going on over there?
Yeah, the North Shore this winter has been pretty epic. We've had a lot of fun swells, and believe it or not, a lot of good wind directions to where we've been able to kite surf some of the waves that you're normally only able to paddle surf or tow surf when it gets big enough. So that's been really fun. And yeah, the boys out there, we've been charging. I've been tow surfing with Conrad Bright, and I see Dan Moore and John Amundsen out there charging it, and numerous other guys just charging. I mean, free riders that push the limits, that inspire me to push myself harder by watching them ride a wave.
And you come from South Carolina, so
Chucktown.
like, how's that? The East Coast guy coming to the North Shore, getting involved in the scene. I mean,
it was I was out there for the first time last year, and when I first got out there, it was kind of heavy. I knew it's just based on respect. If you show respect to anybody, more than likely they're gonna respect you back. And if not, then it's so minor that it's hard not to get it's easy not to get caught up in it. But as far as being from the East Coast, it's not that many guys are from South Carolina, the East Coast, going over there. A lot of guys are from Cali and stuff. So the guys I meet are usually pretty stoked, or that they're just doesn't bother them that I'm there. I just respect everybody and just kind of keep to myself under the radar.
Well, and it's obviously the North Shore is that is the spot for surfing. And I mean, what do you feel is like? What's the energy towards kiters? Are they positive or negative?
The energy level, you feel it. I could feel it shift, because sometimes you see somebody dragging through the lineup, and I could see I'm a surfer myself, if you see that and you're out there surfing, and here comes somebody coming through the lineup with a kite and a board, it can be, negative. But if you're out there, like the crew of guys riding the North Shore now with surfboards are really ripping the waves, like actually doing bottom turns and going back up to the top, straight vertical lips, and it's just like, surfers now, there's like a little buzz happening. They're looking. I've seen a couple surfers looking at it in a different light now.
Have you seen any of the pros getting on the guides?
Actually, a couple of the guys. Yeah, Kahea Hart's been out there riding, charging the North Shore when it gets big and windy, when some of the normal kiters wouldn't go out. And a couple of the other guys, Ryan Rawson, he's a really good surfer and kiting now too, or he's always been kiting.
Well, it sounds like the North Shore is. I know it's just. The feedback I've been getting is there's just a lot more exposure for surfing and stuff. And like, who are some of the professional kiteboarders over there that are charging?
We got Top Hat, Felix, John Amundsen, Dan Moore. He's Dan Moore from the Big Wave event. He's a top kiter out there. You got Tobias cruising. You got numerous names. Conrad Bright, ultimate ripper of backyards. If it's anybody ripping out there, he's killing it. And just the list goes on, and all the boys out there, they know who they are, and they just keep pushing the level, and it makes all of us, push each other, and it's a great feeling out there.
A lot of the listeners, like wave riding is kind of foreign to them, and why don't you talk a little bit about the gear you guys are using?
The best gear is just a normal surfboard. When it's like a solid head high, head and a half day, a normal surfboard, strapless. That's just could be the funnest sessions. Other types we're using, like 5/8 6/0s with straps on them, like toe boards. Pretty much shaped just like your average Grom shortboard, just a little 5/8, real thin rails, just nice and round. And you could even add weight when it's choppy. It makes it work really nice. But you got like guys like Top Hat riding strapless no matter what. He's out there on his strapless surfboard, and man, he either smacks the wave so hard and rips it, or he gets yarded, but he's having a blast. And
actually, it was Top Hat just got married, like not last weekend, the weekend before.
Yep, he just got married. Yep.
A lot of people don't know that Top Hat actually has a house right on Backyards, and I mean, next issue of the Kiteboarder magazine, we'll be doing an interview with Top Hat, and he's an enigma for kiteboarding, I'd say. What kind of kites is everybody using? Are they using the flat kites? Are they using C-shaped kites?
Ryan, some of the guys, you got the old school guys are just, don't even want to listen about the flat kites, so they're riding the traditional C kites, and then you got the guys with the flat kites. So it's a bit of everything out there. There's a good variety going around.
Well, and let's switch gears here. Let's talk now about, flat water riding and the rail thing. And, obviously yesterday you brought out some prototype kite that didn't even really have logos on it, some green thing. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, that thing's pretty mean looking, man. It flies really nice through the air, and it's the first flat kite. It's in between a bow kite and a sea kite, and it's got all the advantages of a bow kite, and it pulls you like a sea kite. So I'm stoked on it.
What's the name of that kite, and who's putting it together?
It's a liquid force kite, and it's coming out next couple years, top secret.
I think there might be actually a picture of it online on the kite forum right now. Actually, it kind of snuck its way in yesterday.
It's called the Havoc, and it's coming out in '07, and it's a killer kite, man. I've been killing it in the waves with it and loving it.
Well, and let's talk to Greg now. Greg, you have proven yourself as a total wake style flat water rail guy. You've hung out with all the boys from Sleazy to Dre. You've trained with the best, and why don't you talk a little bit about why that part of the sport really attracts you?
Oh man, I've been wakeboarding for about 5 years, maybe 6 now, and it's in my blood. I love to do it. I love the speed, love being low and hitting the rails really fast with the kite low, because it feels like what would be on the boat. And then the flat water riding, that's all I got in Florida. I got no waves like Davey's got in North Shore of Oahu, But so that's what we do. I got a couple of my buddies, Andy Herdman for one, John Modica. We all hang out and ride down and push each other. But that's all there is for us to do. And then we get occasional head high wave coming through that's when we turn into a kicker rather than surf it. And so we're doing everything we can behind the boat, behind the kite.
Well, and you were here, and you've ridden a lot of rails, and you rode Buckland yesterday, and you helped actually, engineer the big, I don't even know if we'd call it a A-frame. But what did you think about that?
No, man, that little rail was super fun yesterday. It was small, you could gap it easily, but like I said, I try to go everywhere there's rails, and this place here, Corpus Christi, has got perfect setup for rails because it's constantly windy, flat, shallow water that make it kill the bumps so you don't have to come up all shaky to the rail, and just you could set up for miles and miles of possibilities of killer park, and that's what we're starting to do now, and it's limitless what we can do here.
Well, here's something that I want to throw out at you. I know a lot of people, including myself, I really think what you guys are doing is nuts. But I mean, a lot of people say, "Hey, a rail, kiteboarding. What's the deal? Why is there this? Everyone's building rails and stuff."
That's how it's every sport, every extreme sport that you see. It's always progressed that way, and that's what I like about it. And that's what I want to keep doing. Snowboarding, 10 years back, no one's hitting rails. Now everyone's hitting rails, and the rail parks are dominating the mountains. Same with wakeboarding. Look, 5 years ago, not one rail in any movie. Now it's all about rails. You see entire movies with nothing but rails, and that's what kiteboarding is getting to now. With autofocus, the entire movie is rails, and it's just slow progression. People will get used to it. I think it's going to help out putting our sport.
Well, and with that said, I know that a lot of people don't even understand the gear you ride. I mean, they look at these boot bindings and they're like, "What the heck?" I mean, we heard comments on the beach yesterday. Sometimes boots aren't the most accessible for beginners and stuff. And why don't you talk a little bit about the gear setup for rail riding?
You gotta have boots if you hit the rail, because it gives you the control that you need when you're coming in fast to the rail, so you don't pop out of your boot and crush your nuts against the rail. So yeah, boots are the way to go because it gives you high control over any type of condition.
And Davey, you too. Tell us a little bit about how you switch off between straps, strapless, and then boot bindings.
Yeah, as I was growing up, it was always skateboarding, and then surfing prevailed, and then wakeboarding came along when I was about 16. So transforming that over to kite surfing is just like Greg Norman is saying. You bring the tricks from behind the boat to the kite, and yesterday with the slider set up, the boots helped out so well, because it was super gusty. I was lit on a 6. I had a 6 pulled out of my hand yesterday. That's how windy Corpus Christi is. But anyways, coming into a rail super lit, boots, keep your confidence level high because the board's not coming off your foot, and you can hit that rail as fast as the gust is going to allow you. Straps sometimes, you come out when you least expect it, and like Greg said, you get yarded right on the rail. Crack your nuts.
And you both, I was shooting photos of you guys, and you guys can check out some of these photos at South Coast Kiteboarding or southcoastkiteboarding.com or kiteforum.com. And, there was some sketchy stuff going on. I mean, I saw both of you almost clip that thing and take some beatings, and, what's the worst thing that happened to you yesterday?
Oh, man, I got hit by a gust. This was early in the day when I'm just warming up to the rail. And my front edge actually caught the bottom of the rail, and I flipped up and I skidded across the entire rail on my face. Luckily, my harness took most of the impact, but no, that's the worst part when you go for the ollie and you don't time it right, and either a chop goes down and you can't ollie right, or a gust hits you and you get this huge burst of speed and you don't know what to do. That's the sketchy part. But once you're on the rail, it's good. You're locked on.
Well, and Davey, I mean, you were destroying the rail as well, and then actually we were shooting out late in the day, and you came in for a pass, and all of a sudden that rail, just the whole thing, just decided to fall down.
Yeah, we had gotten a solid, I'd say 2-hour session of just grinding that rail. Me and Mike pushing ourselves. I'd see him stomp something sick and come across yelling and screaming, and I'd have to hit it, and finally the buckland just decided to come down. The end of the day is kind of classic top to the day, just ended it perfectly. It's like we got the shot, we got our job done, and
Didn't end it for me well, man. I wanted to hit that thing more.
yeah, sorry I had to ruin it for you there, Greg, at the end, knock it over. But
The cool thing is that it's exactly what you guys say. Is when it's interesting being a photographer and shooting like two professional riders, because you really see how they do push each other. It's not a vanity, but it's a testosterone thing between men. And they all just keep just throwing it down. And I mean, I watched Greg like go across that rail, and I was just like, I thought he was done. And he popped up, gave me his hand signal that he was cool, and the day went on. But that's one thing I want to talk to you guys, the listeners, about, is that rail riding, these guys are experienced. These guys have a lot of background, and obviously rails aren't for everyone. There's some real safety issues with rails, and you don't want to just think that you can just jump on it and go. And I mean, I know that when I first saw the first photos of you, Greg, you were wearing impact vest, helmet, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, man, like I said, if you're, like, the sketchy part about rails, you can't hit them slow. If you hit them slow, you're not going to have any momentum to carry across the rail, so you're going to fall off on the other side. And then if you're wearing a leash, that's even worse. You think it's going to be you're safe wearing a leash, but you're not. It's actually going to pull you into the rail and get smacked. And, like, even an experienced rider, like my good buddy Jason Slezak, he was hitting the camel toe, which is up in Hatteras, and he fell off to the upwind side and broke his back on a strut. And so these things are sketchy, man. Like, it all depends on the wind. If the wind shifts and you can't get a good angle at it and you catch your edge and you're trying to ollie on, you're going to go head first in that rail. And it's important to wear a helmet. We weren't, because we're stubborn. But it is important.
Stubborn or stupid?
Not both.
All right. And then, real quickly, for those of you who are really interested in rails, I mean, Real Kiteboarding, they have a slider park that you can go and you can take lessons from the best. It's one of the only places in the world that you can go do that. And both of you guys have ridden Real Slider Park. I mean, the place is amazing.
Davey and I actually helped build it.
Yep, me and Greg have been involved in a lot of the sliders out there. Just, if not, opening a beer for somebody, drilling a screw or something, it's all fun up there at Real Kiteboarding. They have nothing but love for the riders.
Yeah, those guys they've invested almost $100,000 in rails. Their rails are as big as some people's homes. It's not a joke. You can go up there and take lessons from the best. So I mean, this isn't a Real Kiteboarding commercial here. This is like, if you really want to progress that style of riding, I mean, that's a good place for you to go.
Yeah, I got Jason Slezak and Sam Bell up there who teach you how to hit these rails.
Yeah, and they're two of the originators of bringing rail sliding into kiteboarding. When I started kiting, I was looking up to those two because they're pushing that level so hard.
And that's a good question. I'm always interested when I ask a rider, like, who do you look up to, Davey?
Sleazy, my boy Sleazy's been there from the, when I popped up surfing off the beach to, a Red Bull qualifier that was up there in Hatteras. I was, getting certified so I could teach lessons at PASA, and every time I'd fall asleep during the lesson, but then that afternoon would just race down to Real Kiteboarding to get to the contest, and that's when I met Sleazy, and I was just inspired by the way he rode. He just looked like he was flowing and just fully stoked on it, and from the beginning he's always been pushing it like that. So. And
Greg?
Man, I gotta say Sleazy too, for one of them for sure. Also, everyone gives props to Dre, but I gotta give props to him too. He's one of your main guys out there charging every day and pulling shit on rails that no one's seen before. And
for real, all the boys.
Yeah, all the boys out now. Like, you've seen in autofocus, they're all just killing it. Everyone from Mauricio won too.
Mauricio.
He's got crazy style on the rails. But then we also look at the wakeboarders, like Shane Bonifay's nose presses, and
Inspiring.
dude, that's what we want to do behind the kite.
And what is a nose press, just for those who don't understand?
Nose press is when you throw all your weight over your leading shoulder onto your nose of your board while you're on the rail, so it actually bends the board and you're actually pressing onto your nose.
It's a real styly trick, the nose press. That's how it's become what it is. It's like who can put the most style and grace while sliding, this technical object, which is sliders, which like Bonifay and some of the other top wakeboarders, they do it so sickly that they've got so much style, and you can see it inside the nose press.
Davey keeps mentioning style, and it's true. Everyone can hit the rails in wakeboarding, say, or snowboarding, but what's judged on now is not how technical a trick is, but how stylish it is. And that's what we want to try to get in kiteboarding.
Well, and we rode out at the beach, actually, on the Gulf side, where there's actually waves, and if people don't realize that, there are waves here on the Gulf. This place it's amazing. It'll blow your mind, and you experienced that, and what did you think of that place, the JP Luby where we rode?
And I love that place because it has everything you want. A huge beach where you can drive your car out right there and dump your gear and pump up and go. Also, the waves are always rolling in, and they're really far apart, so you have the flat water in between, throw all your wake style stuff. Then you have the kickers rolling in, throw wake style stuff off of. And then you have the surf on the outside, which was, about shoulder high.
Yeah, actually, Bucky had his surfboard, and Jeff De La Garza, local rippers, and Mike Danish. Those guys, they just go out on their surfboards.
Yeah, and there's 20 surfers out with us, too, while we're riding.
Well, I want to wrap this up. The one thing I want to ask each of you is, you guys have traveled a lot of places. You've seen a lot of, the problems associated with kiteboarding, and I know I'm just going to stick it to you, but, give a tip. Give one Davey Blair tip for our listeners.
To all you who are beginning kiteboarding, read the book and the magazines before you actually get out there. Really get interested into the sport and want to get out there, because by the time you're up flying your kite, you're going to be so stoked on it to learn how to do it right and how to be safe. Lessons too. If you take lessons, it's going to be insane. Your learning curve. You get to learn what it took an instructor 5 months to learn, and you'll learn it in two hours of a lesson with them. So.
And Greg?
Yeah, like we mentioned, real kiteboarding too at the Slider Park. They got lessons up there. Also, beginning is going to be lessons down here too, South Coast kiteboarding. So, another thing too, know your limits. Don't go out there and think you're badass and charge it, but when you really just don't know what you're doing, that's when people get hurt. And so just
take a lesson.
Yeah, keep your limits to yourself,
Yeah, know your limits. That's what I try to tell people as well when anybody approaches me about kiteboarding. And alright, well, we always do it here at asnews.net. We let people drop bombs. We let them give a shout out to their friends. So Davey, why don't you give a shout?
Yo, shout out to Chucktown, all my boys. You know who you are, TJ, Chuck, Morgan, Ryan. You guys keep on rocking that shiznit. Dauber, all you boys in Charleston. And all the guys out in North Shore too, and the guys here in Texas, man. Ryan, Bucky, all you guys. You guys have been nothing but cool, so bust it, don't trust it.
Yeah, man, I like to say what's up to my boy John and Ian back home. Buddy Alex, him and I are building rails, wakeboarding. Davey and I would also like to thank Liquid Force for putting us out here, and also Ryan Riccitelli for putting us up, man, showing us a good time.
And if you guys don't know, I've done a lot of travel stories, and so it's kind of fun when everyone rallies together. It's kind of like having a slumber party. I got mattresses all over my place. We're up at the crack of dawn. We're looking at the wind directions. Yesterday we built for 2 days to create the rail, and it's just you just feel like a little kid, you know?
How many trips we've done together? The three of us.
Good bit.
We've done a bit of traveling together, and I really appreciate you guys coming out here, and I appreciate your time. I know this podcast is kind of ad hoc, but we're right in the middle of making it happen, as we say. And we shot video yesterday. We shot photos. You can look on South Coast Kiteboarding. You can also look at kiteforum.com. And, we're super busy. We've been working around the clock, and we just decided to fit this little podcast in because we wanted to give the listeners something to listen to this week. But next week, be ready to see some sick footage because it's gonna be coming down. So Anyway, thanks you guys, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Ryan.